A blacked-out prototype rolled onto a stage in the UK with razor-thin DRLs shaped like wings, and the internet started calling it the Batman car. Did Mahindra just build the most dramatic EV India has ever seen? And did it actually make Tesla look twice? The crazy part is, the real story isn't the nickname. It's how an old-school SUV maker quietly built the one thing that scares global EV giants most: a credible platform. Let me tell you how we got here, because this didn't start with a flashy concept. It started with a tiny city car. Back in 2010, when electric cars were a punchline and charging stations were unicorns, Mahindra bought a little company from Bengaluru called Reva. If you ever saw the Reva or the E20, you know they were small, quirky, and way ahead of their time. Those cars didn't win sales charts. They were slow, had short range, and lived in a world that wasn't ready for them. But Mahindra learned. They learned what brakes and heat. They learned how batteries age on chaotic roads. They learned the boring stuff that becomes gold later: thermal management, cost control, service. Meanwhile, Mahindra's bread and butter stayed diesel SUVs: Scorpio, Bolero. Then the XUV 500 and later, the XUV 700, which brought something new in India: radar-based safety tech at a price people could actually buy. They built a reputation for tough frames and 5-star safety ratings. So when the EV wave started to swell for real, they didn't jump with a city car. They went where they were strongest SUVs. In 2021, Mahindra did something else smart. They hired a designer with a cult following in India, Pratap Bose, and gave him a new toy: a design center in the UK called Mahindra Advanced Design Europe. Coventry, wind tunnels, clay models, people who dream in aerodynamics. That team didn't just tweak an old diesel into an EV. They started with a blank sheet and a big question: what does Mahindra look like in an electric future? Two things came out of that work: a new design language with sharp lighting and clean body lines, and something way more important: a skateboard called INGLO. If you've heard Tesla fans talk about platforms, INGLO is Mahindra's version: flat battery in the floor, motors at the axles, software in the middle. You can stretch it for a big family SUV or shrink it for a sporty one, and you don't redesign the whole car each time. It saves money and time, and it lets you share parts across models. And here's where it gets wild. In August 2022, Mahindra took that platform and showed 5 vehicles on it: 2 under the XUV umbrella, XUV.E8 and XUV.E9, and 3 under a brand new BE label: BE.05, B.07, and B.09. They didn't promise flying cars. They promised numbers that matter: batteries in the 60 to 80 kilowatt-hour range, 175 kilowatt DC fast charging targets on CCS2, which means 0 to 80% in under half an hour if the charger can deliver it. Single motor rear drive for efficiency, dual motor all-wheel drive for grip. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in the 5 to 6 second bracket for the faster trims. Those aren't fantasy numbers. That's the zone where cars like the Tesla Model Y and Hyundai Ioniq 5 play. But wait, this next part changes everything. Around 2023, Mahindra signed a supply agreement with Volkswagen to use parts from the MEB toolbox. Think of MEB as the electric guts inside cars like the ID.4. If you're Mahindra, getting access to proven motors, batteries, and electronics from VW means fewer surprises, fewer recalls, and a shortcut to scale. At the same time, Mahindra raised money into its EV arm from big global investors and locked in a new EV factory at Chakan near Pune. This was not a one-car plan. This was a 10-year bet. Now, about that Batman car. In early showcases, especially in the UK and then later in India, Mahindra showed concepts with dramatic DRLs that curl outward like wings, sealed front fascias, and arrow shapes that look like they're drawn with a ruler. Some fans took one look and said, "That's Batman's SUV." Videos and posts started calling it the BE6 Batman Edition. Here's the truth. Mahindra never announced a model called BE6, and they never labeled anything Batman Edition. The nickname stuck because the visuals were bold and blacked out, and it looked like something you'd see under neon in a sci-fi movie. But the car under that costume is very real. It's the BE family, led by the B.05 and B.07, built on INGLO. You thought that was big? Try this. The first BE vehicles aren't vaporware. Test mules have been running on Indian roads. Mahindra has shown interior prototypes with wraparound displays and augmented reality head-up displays that project speed, navigation, and hazards right into your line of sight. We're not talking about a toy. We're talking about the same recipe that makes modern EVs addictive: instant torque, low center of gravity, cabin silence, and software that gets better with updates. Let's talk numbers, and let's make them clear. If Mahindra hits the top end of its announced battery sizes, around 80 kilowatt-hours usable, here's what that means. Most mid-size EV SUVs today consume between 15 and 20 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers in mixed driving, depending on speed, weather, and tires. At 16 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers, an 80 kilowatt-hour pack gives about 500 kilometers on paper. In the real world, think 380 to 450 kilometers between charges if you drive at highway speeds with AC on. That puts it in the same ballpark as a Model Y long range or an Ioniq 5 when you compare apples to apples. If you're used to gasoline numbers, here's a simple bridge. 1 gallon of gasoline holds about 33.7 kilowatt hours of energy. If a car uses 16 kilowatt hours to go 100 kilometers, that's roughly 210 miles per gallon equivalent. That's MPGe. And it's why EVs feel so cheap to drive once you have a place to charge. What about performance? A dual-motor BE in the higher trim should land around 300 to 350 horsepower combined, because that's where competitors sit. Hyundai's Ioniq 5 AWD is 320 horsepower and does 0 to 100 in about 5.2 seconds. The Model Y long range does it in around 5 seconds flat. Mahindra claimed sub 6 seconds for its performance targets. If they hit that, it's right in the middle of the pack. And if you've never floored an EV, numbers don't tell the whole story. The shove off the line feels like a coaster drop, and in traffic it's the difference between thinking and going. Cost is where the Indian story gets real. A Tesla Model Y is not officially sold in India as of now, and importing it attracts eye-watering duties. Hyundai's Ioniq 5 is a great EV, but even with local assembly, it sits around 45 to 50 lakh rupees in many cities. That's out of reach for most buyers. The MPGe EV sits lower in the low to mid-20s. Tata's Nexon EV and Punch EV dominate the mass market from 10 to 20 lakh. Where does Mahindra fit? Expect the first BE.05 to aim somewhere between the Nexon EV and the Ioniq 5, call it mid to high 20s into the low 30s for well-equipped trims, with the bigger 3-row XUV.E8 above that. That's the sweet spot where Indian buyers start to cross-shop with premium ICE SUVs and say, okay, convince me. But what if I told you the bigger battle isn't 0 to 100 times or battery sizes? It's heat. India's summers don't care about spec sheets, batteries hate heat, and power electronics hate it more. Mahindra's early Reva lessons show up here. The INGLO pack uses liquid cooling. That means coolant channels wick heat out of the cells and into a radiator loop, just like your engine did, but smarter. Packs are sealed to IP67 standards, which basically means rain, puddles, and dust storms shouldn't bother them. The cars monitor pack temperature and can slow charging or limit power to protect longevity. That's not glamorous. That's the stuff that keeps a 5-year-old EV from feeling tired. Range is half the charging story. The other half is time. A lot of public chargers in India today are 30 to 60 kilowatts. They'll add 100 to 200 kilometers in 30 to 40 minutes, which is fine on a coffee stop, but not great if you're impatient. The BE family targets 175 kilowatts on CCS2. When you find one of those bigger DC stations, you're looking at 10 to 30 minutes for a big chunk of the battery. At home on AC, you'll plug into 7 to 11 kilowatts if you have a good connection, which is 0 to 100% in 7 to 10 hours, overnight. That's how most EV owners charge. Think of your house as your personal gas station that works while you sleep. Now, reliability. People want to know, will it last? Will the battery fade? Will software glitch? No one can promise a decade of perfection, but there are clues. Mahindra's recent ICE SUVs like the XUV700 scored 5 stars in safety and built trust with ADAS that actually works on Indian roads. EVs have fewer moving parts than ICE cars. No oil changes, no timing chains. Brake pads live longer because regenerative braking slows you down and pumps power back into the pack. Battery warranties are a big tell. Expect 8 years or around 160,000 kilometers as a standard battery and motor warranty, which is in line with global practice. If you lose more than a set percentage of capacity, often around 30% within that window, the pack gets repaired or replaced. Real-world battery fade depends on how hard you drive, how often you fast charge, and how hot your climate is. Liquid cooling helps a lot. So does charging to 80% daily and saving 100% for trips. Let's address the elephant. Is Tesla scared of Mahindra? Tesla is not scared of anyone in a schoolyard way. But Tesla does care about 2 things: margins and scale. India threatens both if Tesla can't build there. High import duties make the Model Y and Model 3 too expensive. The government's new policy offers duty relief if you commit to local manufacturing and big investment. Tesla has been courting and negotiating. If Tesla enters with a smaller, cheaper car, what fans call the Model 2, priced around 20 to 25 lakh rupees, the market flips overnight. Until then, the void at that price point is where Mahindra, Tata, and MG play. That's why a credible, cost-optimized, good-looking Mahindra BE with solid range is a real threat. Not to Tesla globally, but to any outsider trying to win India without a factory. And here's where it gets crazy. The platform war under the hood will decide who wins, not the badges on the grille. INGLO's trick is modularity. One floor pan, many bodies. One set of electronics, many features. Add a motor to go AWD. Swap cell chemistry to change cost or performance. LFP cells are cheaper and last longer but store less energy per kilogram, so they're great for value trims where 350 to 400 kilometers of real range is plenty. NMC cells pack more juice per kilo and deliver better performance, so they're great for halo trims that need the marketing punch. Expect Mahindra to use both over time, like many global brands do, and evolve as local cell factories spin up. One more thing that separates a concept from a car you actually buy is software. The BE interiors previewed a very modern cockpit, thin bezels, a wraparound screen, and a head-up display that draws arrows on the road. Under that glass, the computer matters. Carmakers today use chips like the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8155 or newer to run the dashboard. Maps, music, voice, and over-the-air updates. OTA is crucial. It lets the company fix bugs, improve charging curves, and even tweak steering feel without you stepping into a service bay. It also brings risk. A bad update can annoy an owner overnight. Mahindra learned this on the XUV 700 with early software fixes and over-the-air patches. The BE line needs to ship with a disciplined update cadence and local maps that handle Indian quirks like broken lanes, roundabouts, and sudden cows. This is the unsexy side of EVs, and it's where reputations are made. Safety isn't a feature you switch on. It's the result of decisions at the start. Mahindra has been chasing 5-star crash scores and building that into brand identity. Expect 8 airbags, a strong passenger cell, and a battery shield under the floor to take the hit if you bottom out or kick up debris. Expect Level 2 driver assistance, adaptive cruise, lane keep, blind spot warning, and auto emergency braking, with cameras and radar tuned for Indian traffic, which means handling bikes cutting across and trucks with no taillights at 2 a.m. Will the BE cars drive themselves? No. And you should not want that yet. What you want is a set of eyes that never blink. Let's compare with what you know. The Tesla Model Y long range is the global benchmark for an all-around EV SUV. Around 75 kilowatt-hours usable, around 500 kilometers WLTP, around 5 seconds to 100 kph. The Hyundai Ioniq 5 AWD is similar with a fast 800-volt architecture that can charge very quickly on the right charger. The MPGe EV offers less performance but a more reachable price. Tata's Nexon EV is the sales king in India because it hits the value bullseye. So where does a BE.05 slot? Smaller and sportier than a Model Y, with pricing closer to the ZS EV, but with a next-gen platform underneath and a cabin that aims above the Nexon EV. Where does the XUV.E8 slot? Closer to a 3-row family hauler, like a Ford Explorer-sized EV if Ford made one at Indian prices. That's the plan. Now, about those viral claims that the Mahindra concept recovers 95% of braking energy or uses secret solid-state batteries, that makes for a spicy thumbnail. But let's keep it honest. Regenerative braking can be very efficient at city speeds, and in stop and go, you can claw back a surprising amount of energy. 95% across a driving cycle is not how physics works. Real-world regen efficiency depends on speed, grip, and how full your battery is. It's a great feature. It's not magic. As for solid state, many companies are working on it. Solid state promises safer packs and higher energy density. But it's not in showrooms yet. Mahindra has spoken about evaluating next-gen chemistries as they mature. That's sensible. They're not alone. Until you see a production car spec sheet with a price and a warranty, assume we're on proven lithium-ion, managed well. So how did the Batman idea get so loud? Because the design is the most visible shift Mahindra has made in years. The BE cars are not boxy. They're sharp, low, and clean. Hidden door handles, air curtains for cooling and downforce. A roofline that says sports coupe more than farm truck. If Bruce Wayne lived in Mumbai and hated potholes, this is the vibe he'd go for. That's why people started calling it Batman. But the real flex isn't the shape. It's that Mahindra is taking that shape to production with local manufacturing, a supply chain that blends local and global parts, and pricing aimed at India first. Does this matter outside India? Yes, and not just for bragging rights. Mahindra already sells in over 100 countries with ICE vehicles. EVs open doors in markets that care about emissions targets or fuel prices. Think South Africa. Think parts of the Middle East. Think Latin America. A tough EV SUV that's priced right and doesn't melt in heat could carve out a niche in places Tesla doesn't prioritize. Europe is tougher with safety rules and range of choices, but a right-hand drive market like the UK could be a beachhead if the value lands. The bigger point is this. India is no longer just a buyer of EV tech. It's building it, adapting it, and exporting it. And here's the twist that keeps analysts awake. While social media chants Tesla killer, the real competition in India is local. Tata commands the EV market today by a mile, with the Nexon EV and now the Punch EV. MG has steady traction with the ZS. Hyundai and Kia are coming with more local assembly. BYD is strong in buses and premium EVs but has to navigate policy headwinds. Mahindra isn't trying to win the world on day one. They're trying to win their backyard with products that feel premium, but price at a stretch, not a leap. If they get the B.05 and XUV E8 right, they don't need to beat Tesla. They need to beat the car a buyer already planned to buy. Timeline matters because hype fades. Mahindra has guided that the first INGLO-based SUVs would hit showrooms in phases, starting with the XUV.E8 and followed by the B.05, then B.07. You'll see the real test in the next 12 to 24 months as cars land, reviews roll in, and owners put 10,000 kilometers on them through monsoon and summer. That's when we find out if the cabin rattles, if the software nags, if the range holds up on empty highways at 100 kps with the AC blasting. That's when we separate concept lighting from durability. Charging infrastructure is the other piece of the puzzle. India's big cities are getting denser networks from players like Tata Power, GeoBP, and independent operators. Highways between metros now have pockets of 60 to 120 kilowatt chargers, with a few 150s popping up. It's not the supercharger blanket Tesla drivers enjoy in the US and Europe, but it's expanding fast. Mahindra doesn't need to own the network to succeed, but they do need to integrate with it. That means smart navigation that shows real-time charger status, battery preconditioning on the way to a DC charger so you hit it warm and charge faster, and payment that doesn't make you want to throw the cable. If they nail those basics, road trips stop being an experiment and start being normal. Let's circle back to the start. Did Mahindra build a Batman Edition BE.06? No. They built a platform and a family of EVs with a design language that made people sit up. The nickname was Internet Theater. The substance is the hardware, and the subtext is bigger than a car. India wants to lead in the EV era, not trail. The government's policy now nudges companies to make here, not ship here. Cell factories are planned. Software talent is abundant. If you can solve cost, heat, and infrastructure, you can own the middle of the market. That's the market that moves the needle. So is Tesla scared? Tesla is watching. So is Hyundai. So is Volkswagen, which literally chose to partner with Mahindra to get its tech onto more roads. Fear isn't the right word. Respect is. Because the next wave of EV growth will not be six-figure cars in California. It will be mid-price SUVs in countries where most people pay cash at toll booths and power cuts still happen. Whoever builds for that reality wins the decade. But wait, this next part changes everything. The difference between a moment and a movement is delivery. A flashy concept can break the internet. A quiet, reliable car can change a country. If Mahindra's B.05 and XUV E8 launch with honest range, fair pricing, fast enough charging, and software that gets better, the story we tell a year from now won't be about a nickname. It'll be about a new normal on Indian roads. And that's the plot twist the global EV market didn't see coming. Now step inside that prototype for a final look. The cabin is dark, clean, and future-forward, but not alien. The seats are vegan leather, cool in summer, and memorized for two drivers. The wheel has touch controls, but the important ones still click. The AR display floats your speed at the edge of your vision and draws a green line through heavy rain to show your lane. You whisper, navigate to Jaipur, and the route loads with 3 DC stops. The car tells you where to grab tea. You press the pedal. There's no noise, just a push. You don't launch into the air. You launch into the future. And here's the last wild thought. If Bruce Wayne woke up in Pune in 2026 and wanted something stealthy, fast, and Indian-made, he wouldn't need a bat cave. He'd need a garage with a 7-kilowatt wall box and Mahindra fob on the hook. Because the real superpower isn't a cape, it's a plan. And this time, Mahindra has one.